In late April and early May of 2018, we visited Santa Fe, New Mexico and surrounding areas, and I'd like to share some of the highlights of this trip. Okay, I should start out by saying I am not a fan of organized tours. All of my other YouTube travel videos, the ones that you see here on Colorado, Nova Scotia, San Diego, Montreal, and Iceland, are things that I totally organized myself, did all the research for. Not bragging, it's only because I wanted a lot of flexibility in what it was we saw. And so, we would typically hire private guides and stuff like that. So we ended up seeing quite a bit. But you know what? I wanted to just try something different. So I heard about Road Scholar and decided, well, maybe we'll just give this one a try and see what happens. So the name of this tour from Road Scholar was the Great American Get Together in Santa Fe. And it was from April 27th through May 4th. So this was an organized tour with some free time here and there. Well, because it was an organized tour, we had to fly out of their designated airports because they had a special arrangement, and it involved what they called free airfare. I won't get into it, but we did have to spend a little bit of money on that. So anyway, instead of flying out of Hartford, the closest airport to where we live, we drove to Boston. No big deal. We've flown out of there before, like every time we go overseas. So we did that, but it was a very early morning flight, like 6:20 a.m. So we had to stay overnight in Boston because it's like an hour and a half, maybe an hour and three quarters to get to the airport in Boston from where we live. So we stayed in the Hilton. That cost a chunk of money because it's right there at the airport. And that was the view from our window at the Hilton. You can see Boston Harbor, obviously the airport. And we noticed this interesting thing. You can see some movement in that structure. And I don't know if it was projected or what, but it was very intriguing right outside of our window. So there it is over again on the left. And then we're just going to pan across to the skyline, the airport, and then Boston on the mainland. The way you get to Logan Airport in Boston is from an underground tunnel, the Ted Williams Tunnel. So it's always a very, very busy and congested place, as you might expect. So we got there, and of course we had to eat dinner, so we went into the airport because whenever we're in Boston, we kind of like legal seafood. And I'm not a seafood eater, but the one thing I will eat are crab cakes if they're made well, and Legal Seafoods makes great crab cakes. What I discovered is there are all kinds of legal seafood sort of side restaurants. I don't know what they are. They all look like Legal Seafood. They all have the same menu. But this one was called Legal Sea Bar. And it wasn't just a bar. It was a sit-down restaurant. Of course, it had a bar, but I think all Legal Seafoods do. Go figure. Anyway, so there you see our crab cakes. We each had the appetizer version, meaning just one crab cake. And then key lime pie for dessert, which is incredibly filling. My wife likes hers loaded with whipped cream and God knows what. I like mine pristine. So the first day we traveled from Boston, and we had to change planes in Dallas, Fort Worth. We were flying American Airlines, and then end up in Albuquerque, New Mexico, where we then caught a free shuttle arranged by Road Scholar to drive us about 45 minutes to an hour to Santa Fe to our hotel, where we registered. We picked up our registration packet. We checked in. We got our orientation lecture in the evening, early evening, and then had a welcome dinner for all 89 participants. So as I said, we flew out American Airlines, flew into Dallas, Fort Worth. That's what the airport looks like from above. It's weird, but it worked. I mean, we had to go from one terminal to the next, but they have these trains. We didn't know they did, by the way, but that made things a lot simpler because I thought we were going to have to walk, and we didn't. So we had more than enough time to make our connection flight. And we flew into the Albuquerque International Sunport, which is their airport. And then we boarded our shuttle and went from the Sunport down here in Albuquerque. There's Albuquerque. And then all the way up to our Hilton Santa Fe Historic Plaza Hotel. And that was the conference hotel. I mean, the Rhodes Scholar Hotel. It wasn't a conference. And it wasn't too long, just over an hour, not too bad. And the scenery was very, very interesting. So that's the Hilton Santa Fe Historic Plaza, which was a great location, by the way, because we could walk to some really interesting places and restaurants. So I went exploring. My wife likes to rest when we check into these places. I don't. So I immediately start exploring around the hotel. And from this, you can see that we are not in Connecticut anymore. It's pretty much like we saw on our Colorado trip. There are cannabis dispensaries everywhere. So this is one that was just down the block from our hotel. And lots of artwork, very nice artwork on the paint on the buildings. This was right near that cannabis store, and really nicely done. Just about everywhere you go, you're going to see some really interesting artwork that is on buildings, on bridges, almost everywhere. Well, I was walking down there because I really wanted to pick up some beer to have at night, and so I walked to a mall, it turned out, that was only about 25 minutes away, and picked up these two more or less local brews, the Odell Brewing Company's Mercenary Double IPA. I only like IPAs now, so they were both IPAs. Double IPAs are better. They have more body to them. Unfortunately, they have a lot more alcohol, or maybe that's fortunate. I don't know. But anyway, that's from Fort Collins, Colorado. And then the Hop Rising Double IPA from whatever brewery that is. I don't see the whole name. Squatters. Maybe it's Squatters. I don't know. Anyway, I didn't like that one very much at all. I almost dumped it out, but I decided to go ahead and drink it. The Mercenary was pretty good, though. I did like that one. So then we divided into 3 groups that we would maintain throughout our tour. And our group was called the Verde Tour. Verde means green. And there was a Rosa Tour, which means red. And there was oh boy, and I am totally blanking. Well, whatever color it was, tour. Azul, that's what it was, which means blue. And that was our tour guide, and she was unbelievably awesome. Elizabeth Schroeder. Oh my God, did we luck out in getting her as a tour guide. She was great. So, okay, that was it. After she gave us the orientation, and then we had the evening to rest. And then on day 2, we had our first regular tour day, and it started out with 2 lectures. The first one was with Elena Nunez from the lecture was called History of New Mexico, and she is a member of the Okeowinge tribe. That is a pueblo that is north of Santa Fe. And so she really knew the history inside and out, and that was an awesome lecture. I really liked that one. The second lecture was by Jerry Reitman, who talked about Georgia O'Keeffe. Okay, full disclosure, I am not into art at all. And so I won't say at all. I mean, there are some kinds of art I like, but it's kind of non-traditional art. So I was pretty bored through this, and I think I was the only one of 89 people who was kind of bored through this. But, Georgia O'Keeffe played an important role in this area of New Mexico, so I totally get it. I knew from the literature we had sent to us from Rhodes Scholar in advance that all this was coming, and it had a lot of things to do with Georgia O'Keeffe. So, okay, whatever. I'll do something else or tune out or whatever. so I tuned out. But actually, I didn't. I tried to listen. It just was of no interest to me. My wife loved it, every minute of it. So then, after lunch, we had a field trip with Elizabeth, who took us on a walking tour of the historic plaza in Santa Fe. It's like 5 minutes from our hotel. And so that was very, very interesting. She pointed out a lot of really interesting things. And then we had some free time to explore on our own in the afternoon as well as the evening, find a place to have dinner, and so on and so forth. So let's go into day 2 in a little bit of depth. This is Elena Huñez, again from the Okeowinge Pueblo. She is so knowledgeable. It was just great having her as a speaker. And as you'll see, she gave a second lecture a few days later. So, by the way, just for orientation purposes, we did not visit the Okeowinge Pueblo. We did visit 2 other ones, but the Hilton is here, and the Okeowinge is only about 36, 40 minutes away from our hotel. And then Jerry Reitman talked about Georgia O'Keeffe. Georgia O'Keeffe was born in 1887 and died in 1986. She lived a very long and productive life as an artist. This is an example from her art, by the way. This art piece is called Gray Lines with Black, Blue, and Yellow that she painted in 1923. And a lot of people have interpreted this as portraying women genitals. And I guess it's always in the eye of the beholder what you're going to see in art. Basically, it's supposed to be some kind of a plant, but, whatever. I don't know. I don't care. Anyway, Georgia O'Keeffe ended up kind of living at Ghost House. And later on in this presentation, we're going to visit Ghost House, and Ghost House was incredible. Not because of Georgia O'Keeffe, but because of Ghost House, and you'll see why when we get there. But anyway, here she is in a photograph in 1944, taken on the patio at Ghost House, and so she kind of made this her home, and I really enjoyed Ghost House, but we'll get to that much later. Here she is also at Ghost House, painting her abstraction of whatever is out there. I don't know if it's supposed to be this mountain here or not, but whatever. And there's another of her paintings. Now this one, I should say, is iconic because this is a mesa. Mesas are, and the reason they're flat on top, that is where sea level used to be many, many moons ago. I mean, this was, thousands, billions, millions, billions. I don't know. I keep forgetting these amounts because they kept coming at us left and right by our tour guides. But anyway, that used to be sea level in this area of New Mexico. The entire state was, in fact, underwater at one point billions of years ago, which is kind of interesting. But this one, it's not really on Ghost Ranch, but it's very, very visible, as you'll see from photos that I later took of Ghost Ranch from that property. And she really enjoyed painting that, and this is just one example of her painting of this mesa. Okay, so our walking tour. So just to orient you, here's our hotel. Right over here, the Hilton. And so we ended up walking around. This is, where did we go, by the way? Oh, we walked up here, which leads directly to the square. I think we did cut over and walked on this street for a while, which also leads directly to the historic plaza that you see here. So this is the street we started on. And so our tour guide, Elizabeth, said this is a very popular photograph to take because it shows all these artsy areas with the mountains in the background. So, of course, I had to take a photo of it. And this shows an aerial view of the historic plaza. And it's not super huge, but, it occupies just a typical park square. And you can see this monument of sorts right in the middle. And there it is from ground level, as I saw it. And as most monuments have, there's some kind of an inscription down here. So let's look at what that says. To the heroes who have fallen in the various battles with Indians in the territory of New Mexico. What's wrong with this? Well, I guess you could say Indians. It's no longer politically correct, but there it is. There's no room to change that to Native Americans or, however you want to change it. But in any event, there's something else I think that's pretty obvious. They have taken out a word right over there because they just deemed it very, very politically incorrect, and rightly so. So what do you think that word might be? Time's up. Savage. Who have fallen in the various battles with savage Indians. We're the ones who took from them. They were defending what they had. Give me a break. I'm glad they replaced it. But when they did that, well, they didn't replace it. They just left it blank. People started writing in their own words when they took that away. And some of the words that came up were quite good. Courageous Indians. And another one, resilient, which they were Indians. And so people would just write in, and then they'd have to go back and paint over it or whatever. They didn't want anything there. The only snarky thing that I could think of was Cleveland. Battles with the Cleveland Indians. But no, that didn't happen in New Mexico. In any event, whatever. So, that's that monument. And so we also saw the New Mexico Museum of Art from the outside. This is very typical of the kind of architecture that you find in this part of the country. Certainly not like back east. And this is the Palace of the Governors right across the street from the historic plaza. These are all merchants. These are Native Americans who bring in their goods. It mostly turns out to be jewelry of various types. You might find some pieces of clothing here and there, but not much more than that. And they sit there like all day. It has to be grueling. And, you can only hope that they're selling enough to get by. These people obviously do not look like they're very wealthy people. But anyway, they are there. They are certainly permitted to do that, and it's a good thing that they are. But if you go in the main entrance, which I'll show you later, we're in the Palace of the Governors. We also walked by the Worrell Gallery. There's nothing special about the gallery. I guess the building's kind of interesting, but I thought this monument was kind of interesting. We see monuments all over the place of animal-human type figures, as well as just animal figures, as well as human type figures. And then, oh my God, this is really interesting. The Rainbow Man. So the Rainbow Man, you walk through this little portal off that main street, and you enter this very small plaza, and it's called the Rainbow Man. I don't really know. I think she told us what that means. It doesn't matter. But what it is are all these little shops on the inside portion of this screen. I think the shops were closed for lunch or something when we were there. But what's super interesting is what is right over there on the wall. Oh, by the way, that is just an example of some of the things that they sell there. This, by the way, is like Day of the Dead type art. And there's a lot of this you'll find in museums as well as the various galleries. But getting back to this plaque. Okay, here's what it says. 109 East Plaza. 109 East Palace. 1943-1963. Santa Fe Office, Los Alamos Scientific Laboratory, University of California. All the men and women who made the first atomic bomb passed through this portal to their secret mission at Los Alamos. Their creation in 27 months of the weapons that ended World War II was one of the greatest scientific achievements of all time. which is arguable. I mean, I mean, you could argue that either way. But what's really interesting about this is that the scientists who were involved in developing the atomic bomb, especially J. Robert Oppenheimer, would go here and do their work and then report back to Los Alamos, which is just up the road. Well, not just up the road, it's some miles away from Santa Fe, but not all that far away from Santa Fe. The thing is, when they were here in Santa Fe, they were not allowed to use their real names. They had to use fake names. They made up whatever name they wanted, but it wasn't their real name. And again, everything was in the name of total secrecy while they were here, planning and developing and designing and so on and so forth, and then going back to Los Alamos to implement. Well, okay, then we saw the Cathedral Basilica of St. Francis of Assisi. Pretty nice church right there. And we were able to go in, and they allowed photography. Most churches don't, but they did. And they had a lot of really nice stained glass windows, as well as other art in this structure. And then I saw, let's see, the Ellsworth Gallery. I have no idea what that is or what they have inside, but I was really enjoying this dragon on the roof. And there's a close-up of the dragon. I'd love to have one of those on my roof. I think that'd be so awesome. And then walking back, I saw the Old Borough Alley. So this is one end of the alley. It's a very short alley, actually. And there's the statue of the Old Borough. And there's a shot of the alley. Again, it's not very long. And there's artwork along the walls over here and another piece of artwork that I'll show you in a second. So that's basically it. I mean, it ends on the other side of those umbrellas, which is part of a restaurant. But one of the pieces of artwork on the wall is this one, the Old Borough Alley. And so you can see where they got the statue idea from that painting on the wall, the Old Borough. The thing about the Old Borough, from what Elizabeth told us, this used to be an area of ill repute, to put it in a PG way. So there were all kinds of houses where women would entertain men at the other end of this alley. And you can substitute whatever you want for the word entertain. This was a rather magnificent structure. It's the Lensic Santa Fe Performing Arts Center. And again, this is on one of those roads that goes directly to the historic plaza from our hotel. Really incredible artwork up on top. But this is functioning. As you can see, there are things going on here all the time. Now, there's galleries all along that street. And again, not into art, so I don't care about galleries. But I walked past this one and something caught my attention. I mean, first of all, those figures in that window caught my attention big time because it wasn't paintings. It was, well, there's some paintings there, but it was a little bit more interesting to me. So I go inside, I had time, I go inside, and it was like, oh my gosh. Again, there's various figurines, statues, whatever. But then I saw some of this art, this animal art. There's a horse. I couldn't quite tell what it was. Is it a bear? Is it a wolf? Is it a dog? A horse, horses. And, that's definitely a wolf or a dog or whatever. This was also in the window, on the other side of the window that I didn't show you. And this photo of the painting in no way does this painting justice. This is so lame. The painting was so awesome. I love that painting, and I would have done anything to get it, but it was incredibly expensive, and I couldn't afford it. And I really don't have a spare wall at home. We don't have many walls in our home. It's a lot of glass to hang something like this. But I love this. The author is Shondell Oliver, and if you go to her website, moderncountryart.com, go to the index.html, and you'll see all kinds of samples of all types of her art, not just the animal art. But I think she's fantastic, and I just wish, number one, I could afford it, and number two, we had room for it. Well, Again, we were on our own for dinner this night, so a recommendation from Elizabeth was the Plaza Cafe. It's right across the street from the historic plaza. In fact, if you're looking at the reflection of the window where those folks are standing, they're at the edge of the historic plaza. So we went in here, and one of the reasons that she did recommend it is that it is, in fact, the oldest restaurant in Santa Fe that was established in 1905. It's basically a combination diner, old-fashioned diner, and sit-down restaurant. So Elizabeth had also told us about a fantastic dish that you find out there made of green chilies and red chilies. Basically, it's the same chili, apparently, and you get, I guess, the red because you allow it to grow longer on the vine. I might be getting that backwards. I might be getting it wrong entirely, but I think it is the same chili. So I had to have a bowl of this because she said this is incredible, and I like spicy things. And this indeed was pleasantly spicy. And of course I had an IPA, which as you see here is half drunk. Okay, next day. Next day is totally packed. It turned out to be like a 12-hour awesome day. We went to the Taos Pueblo and then Taos Plaza to walk around for a short time and find a place to eat. And then the Rio Grande Gorge Bridge, and then the Millicent Rogers Museum, and then our early banquet dinner. We had a final banquet at the restaurant that our bus driver from the airport to Santa Fe described as the best restaurant of all of them in this area, Gabriel's Restaurant. The mailing address, interestingly, if you look at, if you search for Gabriel's Restaurant, you're going to get a Santa Fe, New Mexico listing, but it's really about 15 minutes north of Santa Fe in Pojoaque. I think it's Pojoaque. I don't speak Spanish. New Mexico. That place, New Mexico. And so our first trip was from our hotel up to Taos. Taos is right there, bypassing that a little bit and making our way to the Pueblo, Taos Pueblo. And that was about an hour and a half, an hour and 40 minutes thereabouts. There was some really good scenery, by the way. You can see how mountainous it was. And along the way, this is an example of more artwork, by the way. This is a bridge embankment, and I think this is the fanciest bridge embankment of all the ones we saw in terms of art. So there are these bison, and you keep going through, and there's the other side of the bridge with bison facing the other way. And then here they are, both of them together. And then the other side had these horses. And again, really incredible art along this embankment of this bridge. So then we get to Taos Pueblo. So there were certain rules that apply to each pueblo. This one, as pueblos go, pretty liberal. There were things that you had to do, bearing in mind that this is where people live, like right now. And so you are entering their home. And so you got to just, respect them, bearing in mind, well, what would you expect of strangers walking around your house, your neighborhood, your backyard, whatever, because that's exactly what's happening to these people here. So this was one of the more tolerant pueblos in terms of people visiting. I'll show you on a subsequent day that we visited one that was kind of the opposite, and probably for good reason. So we initially had a 20-minute walking tour from a guide who just she gave us an orientation. She's a local to the Pueblo, though she's one that does not live in the Pueblo. She lives in Taos. And just showed us around and said, okay, now you're on your own, you can explore, but follow the rules. This is a church on the Pueblo property, no photographs allowed inside. And this is from the outside of the church looking outward now. And again, very typical Pueblo architecture with these adobe structures. Really, really interesting. These are actual baking ovens in use today. And so what you can't see here in the back, there's a small opening, but you put your baked goods in here. People use these to bake breads, cookies, pastries. To this very day, you can buy some right there at the Pueblo, and we in fact did have one of their specialty breads that was recommended to us. And it was great, by the way. Now, they are lucky. New Mexico does not have much water at all in most places, but they do have this running stream through this Pueblo. And so that helps them in terms of planting things and so on and so forth, getting water, to drink and whatever. So they are pretty lucky in this regard. And then just panning across. There's 2 or 3 bridges, walking bridges, you get across that stream. There's the edge of one of them right over here. So you go back and forth. It's no big deal. And again, a good view of this elaborate structure over here. And by the way, these in front are drying racks. And so they're made of logs, and there's logs, sort of like a raft with spaces in between, lying along the top. And what they'll do is they'll put meat out there to dry, other things out there to dry, various goods that need to be dried out. And once they're dried out, they'll take them in and do whatever. If it's meat, obviously, sell them or consume them. These ladders, by the way, there's no staircases inside these structures. So the way you go from one level to the other is via these outside staircases. So to go to this store, you need to walk up here and go in there. If you want to get on the roof over here, you need a taller ladder, and all the way around. So these ladders are everywhere. It's the only way you can get up there. And then there was this graveyard right there on the property. The Taos Pueblo tour guide told us that this is totally full. Nobody else is getting buried there. I believe she may have said they're getting buried in Taos itself. But it was an interesting site. Some of these are obviously very old. Some of them are more modern, more recent. There's a functioning bell right up there in that structure. So after we had our free time to explore Taos Pueblo, which was great, we then boarded the buses and then went into Taos. It's only about a 10-minute drive into the main area, where we were let loose into the plaza. And there's the historic Taos Plaza. And you can see that it dates back to a very, very early age. Coronado arrived there in 1540. The Tiwa Indians were there in 1350, obviously predating the days of Columbus, who was not a nice guy, by the way, but that's another story. So again, you get a good feel for the structures, these various adobe structures. Most of these around here are shops, restaurants, and things like that. So our tour guide recommended we don't go too far off the plaza to eat, because we didn't have a whole lot of time, I think an hour and a half or so, before we had to reboard our buses. So she said, there's this great place called the Gorge Bar and Grill that's right there on the plaza. And so there it is right there, the shot taken from the plaza. And you just go in here and you walk up some stairs and you are there. There's outside seating and indoor seating. It was kind of cold and breezy, especially breezy that day. In fact, they always have a lot of wind out there. But anyway, we decided, it's too cold outside, we'll eat inside, so we did. Well, what our tour guide Elizabeth didn't know, so this is not her fault at all, and when I told her, she was totally apologetic. It took forever in there. We only had an hour and a half, and it took forever for them we got seated immediately, but by the time they took our order, that was probably a good half hour later. I mean, somebody came by in the interim saying, okay, we're going to send somebody right away, and of course they didn't right away. And by the way, one of our group just got up and left. They weren't going to sit there any longer. And then after they took our order, then it was probably close to another half hour before we got it. So there's a whole hour of an hour and a half that's blown. Did we order anything elaborate? No, it's lunch. All I ordered was some basically corn chips and salsa and a side order of guacamole. My wife just had a salad. This does not take long to make at all, and it's probably pre-made anyway. So that was not a great experience. But anyway, by the way, when we got up and left, another couple from our group that was sticking it out hadn't even been served yet. So they managed to get things pushed along somehow because they did end up making the bus, but not by much. So we had a little bit of time, not a lot, to go exploring around the plaza. Again, there's not a whole lot to see. There are a lot of shops. And there was one that was a little bit interesting. It had a lot of fossils and replicas and things like that. And we then boarded the bus and then made our way from Taos Plaza over to our next stop, the Rio Grande Gorge Bridge. And that was incredible. And that's what it looks like. And down below it is, in fact, the Rio Grande River. And there it is. So they gave us a few minutes. I wish they gave us longer, but they wanted to get to the next stop. So, okay, whatever. So everybody's rushing out on the bridge. There is a little bit of a walkway on either side, so it's kind of safe. And you can see it's quite deep. There's the Rio Grande River. And it was just awesome. I love outdoor kinds of things, unlike indoor art museums. Speaking of which, we then went from the Rio Grande Gorge Bridge to the Millicent Rogers Museum, about 11 to 15 minutes away. I'd never heard of this person, Millicent Rogers. So I'm thinking, well, why is there a museum? Well, they did do some explaining along the way about who she was. Anyway, there's the museum. And there she is. She was born in 1902, died in 1953. She was like this glamorous, or at least she thought she was glamorous person. She was married at one point to the actor Clark Gable and then divorced. And I don't know, married to other people for how long or whatever. I just don't care about people's personal lives who are in the media like this. So anyway, yeah, but she was also a person that gave back to the community, and I thought that part of her was very nice. So that's pretty much, I think, what justified this museum. And so they had these various displays inside the museum. I like this one because it does show how thick an adobe brick is, remembering that so many of these structures are made of these adobe bricks. So they are that thick to provide excellent insulation in the summertime to keep things cool inside, and in the wintertime to keep things warm inside. And we were alerted that if you come to this door, you have to find the door yourself, which I did. And if you look down, there's this little threshold, and you'll see people's initials on it. And in fact, she is one person, there, M.R., Millicent Rogers, who carved her initials in it. So there's a blow-up I took of the M.R., and that's where it's located in a regular far shot of the threshold, along with a lot of other people. And, she was this huge socialite. I mean, for example, T.M., Thomas Mosby, a writer and friend of Ernest Hemingway. This is her crowd. These are the kinds of people she hung out with, which is absolutely fine. I can't relate to it. I don't care. It doesn't matter. But anyway, that's Millicent Rogers. I didn't want to look at any of the art, so I got out of there. I was more interested in looking at the outdoors. It was a gorgeous day. So I walked around the outside of the museum, and this is a hoop dancer statue. Hoop dancers are huge in New Mexico. We've seen a number of statues of these Native American hoop dancers. And so this one was particularly nicely done. And then not too far away from that one, still outside the museum, there's the museum right over there, is this other statue, which is much more abstract. I believe it's some kind of a human-like figure done in the abstract. Okay, finally, after everybody was done with the museum and boarded the buses, we went from the museum, retracing some of our steps, and headed back toward Santa Fe and ended up at a place that was not planned on. Our tour guide said, "Don't tell anybody about this, that I'm taking you here." So everything I'm telling anybody who's listening to this now, you're not hearing it. But we went to the San Francisco de Assisi Church. And the reason she took us there is that this is the most photographed gas meter in the world, according to some. I mean, who among travelers, who goes around photographing gas meters unless you have some gas meter fetish? And I don't know if people have that kind of fetish or not. But there it is. Why? Why is this the most photographed gas meter in the world, or why would any gas meter be photographed? Well, the reason is because of what it's attached to. It's the backside of that church. And so if you're going to take a picture of the church from that angle, you're going to get the gas meter in frame. Here it is from the front, the front of that church, San Francisco de Assisi. It was closed. We couldn't get inside. But anyway, that's why she took us there. Okay, now, heading back, we were bordering the Rio Grande River for a while. It doesn't border the superhighway we were on back to Santa Fe the entire way. But this portion was. Now, I was sitting on the other side of the bus as we were going north. Now we're coming south. And so I could see the Rio Grande River. You're going to be seeing a lot of photographs like this taken from inside the bus. Another reason I don't like tours, I mean, there's so many places that if I was driving, we could have stopped off. But if you're on a tour bus, you're at the mercy of wherever they plan on you stopping off. And it's just something I don't care for in terms of these organized tours. But that's just me. Okay, so again, we are now heading down. And we are going, there's passing through the area of the Okeowinge Pueblo, through Española, and then Pojoque. Oh, I think I just pronounced it correctly, by the way. Pojoque. There it is. That's it. Pojoque. And that's where Gabriel's is technically located. The mailing address is Pojoque. So there's the restaurant sign as we're entering. And you go through this portal and you end up in a courtyard. And then they had us all situated, because there were 89 of us, in our separate indoor room. So there we are at these kind of longish tables, and everybody was ordering guacamole for the table. So there were several bowls of guacamole for the table. Most people, not all, had margaritas. So therefore, that means everybody's going to toast with their margaritas like that. And then finally, we're watching here just a portion of our wait person's awesome work preparing the guacamole. We get guacamole at almost every restaurant we go to. Maybe not every time, but a lot of times. This guy had the technique down to an art, using two hands, one with this spoon and the other one with this, why am I blanking on that word? It's a thing that you stir with. The thing that you stir with and the spoon. And so, okay, so we started out with guacamole. And again, I was told by Elizabeth the green chili stuff there is awesome, so I had to get their green chili stew, which I did. And it was pretty substantial. It was a lot to eat, for me at least. I don't eat big dinners or anything. Had pork and potatoes and all kinds of other things mixed in. And it was great. Again, very nicely spicy. So, and we had the reason there's two margaritas at the bottom, these were kind of small. Where we go to a Mexican restaurant we go to in Connecticut enables you to have what they call a grande margarita, and that's much larger. And so they never had these options where we were in New Mexico. And so one just didn't quite cut it. So both my wife and I ended up with two margaritas. When we were done, a bunch of us walked outside to this patio before reboarding our bus. It was already pretty dark. It was actually very dark. It was totally dark, but you don't get that from this photograph that I took because there was a light shining down on this fence. So I thought that this was a particularly interesting view of the fence in the foreground, and that's the moon in the background. It was a full moon, but there was no way that I could get that to form a moon. So we ended up with that splotch of white light, but it's the moon, and you can see that typical New Mexico terrain, very desert-like with sparse vegetation. Okay, got back very late. So day 4, the next day, we started out with a lecture which I thought I was going to find totally boring, and I found just the opposite. Oh my God, did I love this lecture, called Art and Myth. It was the word art that was throwing me off, actually, by Ramsin Lomadawama. And he was awesome. He is a member of the Hopi Pueblo. And then we had later on a field trip to Meow Wolf Complex, and that is totally trippy, as you'll see. And then in the evening after dinner, we had a 1-hour concert by Ronald Roybal, who is a Native American musician. So starting off with Ramsin Lomadawama. He is a glass artist. To simply call him a glass blower is not doing him justice whatsoever. He makes jewelry as well, but his main function is glass art. And he's also done some writing. He does some glass blowing, by the way. Now, the reason he works in glass, this is kind of interesting, because in the Hopi tribe, the women are the ones who make pottery out of clay. Men are not supposed to be doing that. They have to find some other medium in which to work. So he decided, okay, I'm going to work with glass. And there are not many Hopi that work with glass. For a while, he was the only one. Now, he has been training other people. He has students in his studio that he's trying to get into shape to do their own, and I think has been successful, but to a limited extent. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Only women can work in clay. He had to find something else, and so he chose glass. I'm so glad that he did, as you'll see. So here is a video showing some of his glass work. Now, this is one that ultimately is going to form a piece that is similar to one that I bought from him right there on the spot, because he had several on display. And here he is.
You just want to create movement in the glass. When I conduct a class, my opening line is, this class is not about learning how to blow glass. This class is about learning how to overcome fear. Fear of temperature, fear of failure, fear of burning yourself, fear of not being understood, fear of not getting it. So I try to get people to understand that you grow with this. You grow with the gift that you have. You just don't have it 100% at the get-go. People ask me, are you self-taught? I said, well, no, because I can't teach myself something I don't know. But I am self-learned. So it's a constant learning process. I found that when you're constantly encountering challenges and problems, it's an opportunity to grow. That and coffee really helps keep my brain cells going. I'm not finished learning. I've learned that the only time a person fails is when they quit trying. And with younger people today out on the reservation, I believe that it's part of our jobs as artists to instill younger people that their culture has great value, that it doesn't have to be in this shoebox that we call culture, that we can go and try different things. If some people don't like what you're doing, you know, they've got a problem. I don't have a problem. And we as artists need to support each other like that. Let's face it, this is 2014. This is not 1897 anymore.
Yeah, the video was made in 2014. I love his philosophy. I am not self-taught. I can't teach myself something I don't already know. I'm self-learned. And that if people don't like his art, they have a problem. That's not his problem. He is so wise. I mean, if I lived out there, I would want to become best friends with him. He's an incredible human being. Now, the idea for the art piece that you just saw came from these drawings on the wall of this particular area. And these are human-like figures, very crude human-like figures. There's a bunch over here. And just looking at that bunch of people, these are what are known as spirit beings. And so he was trying to portray in glass these spirit beings. And that's the one that I bought from him. And so he also sold me the stand, and I'll show it to you lit up in a minute, but lit up from the bottom. This is called frit. These different powders of frit. They're a powder version, small, medium, large, and super large. And so what you saw him rolling the glass in when he took it out of the oven to incorporate different colors was in fact rolling it in frit and then putting it back into the oven, taking it out, rolling it some more, and so on and so forth to create these various color patterns. And then he would also use some little chunks of something. I'm not sure if it was the super large frit or something else, because in each one of his art pieces he would put something that was just kind of interesting and you didn't quite know what it was supposed to be. And so here it is lit up. I turned the light on from below on this stand. And so I bought both this piece and the stand. And I just thought it was entirely incredible. Here I just turned it around, turned the human spirit, the spirit being rather, around from behind. Really, really nice artwork. I'd never seen anything quite like that out here, and so I definitely wanted to pick him up, and I was really glad to be able to support him by purchasing it from him. Okay, let's see. After lunch, an adventure. We went from our hotel, and now we're heading back towards Santa Fe, actually. Toward Albuquerque. Not too far, though. But that's the general direction, because we're still, in the populous area of Santa Fe. Stopping off at this place called Meow Wolf. It's like, oh my God, what on earth is a Meow Wolf? Okay, let me try to explain Meow Wolf. I think it's inexplicable. But these guys, a couple of guys, I don't know if it's these two guys. I think this guy was definitely involved, probably this guy as well. Wanted to do something different. They wanted to buy this bowling alley, and they didn't have any money to do so. So they wanted to create a unique interactive experience for people. So one of the local residents of Santa Fe happens to be none other than George R.R. Martin, who you might know as the author of the Game of Thrones, the books, and he's also hugely involved in the HBO production. So he's rich, obviously. So he actually gave them the funding to purchase and get started with this interactive experience type place. And he's continued to fund them. He has been a major benefactor of them. Why Meow Wolf? Where did those words come from? They were trying to figure out a name for this experience that they were creating. So notice I'm not saying museum, because I think that might be misleading. So what they did are the people that were involved in producing it all wrote one word on a strip of paper, one word only, put all the paper in a hat, and then somebody was designated to draw out two pieces of paper, and whatever words would be on those two pieces of paper would be the name of this place. So somebody drew Meow, and then came Wolf, and thus you have the creation of Meow Wolf. So as you drive in, there are various large structures on the outside. Yeah, sign says don't climb on the spider. That would be pretty dangerous, I think. And then something, if you've ever seen the original movie from the 1950s with, what's the actor's name? Rennie, somebody or other, Rennie, and Patricia O'Neill. The Day the Earth Stood Still, not the remake with Keanu Reeves. That was a horrible movie, I thought. The original is great, The Day the Earth Stood Still. This robot is very reminiscent in some ways, not in all ways, of the major tall robot in that movie named Gort. And I guess the main reason is because of the visor on the head, which enabled Gort to see when that visor lifted up. I don't know if they had that in mind. I kind of suspect they had to. But anyway, these things are huge, as well as this. I guess that might be the wolf of the Meow Wolf. I don't know. I didn't see any cats out there. But anyway, there it is right there. House of Eternal Return, that is part of Meow Wolf. It's the major part. An experience that takes place in dark spaces with stairs, low overhangs, yeah, very low, tight spaces, oh yeah, very tight, flashing lights, yeah, big time, theatrical fog effects, and exposed materials. By wearing this bracelet, you acknowledge that Meow Wolf is not responsible for any harm or injury that is caused within the space. Please stay alert and do not act in harmful ways to yourself or the exhibit. You have to stay super alert or you're going to be walking into all kinds of stuff. So they stick this bracelet on you after you pay your entry fee and then turn you loose to go. There is no rhyme or reason. There is no map in terms of where to go, where to start, where to end up, where to go from here. Nothing. Everything is interconnected to everything, and you just need to explore. Now, there is a plot if you want to take the time to do that. The plot, and you need to read more about it in, I guess, the first area you come to get started, to learn more about it, which we did not have time to do, and I wasn't interested in pursuing that anyway. That would have taken a long time. But the plot is basically that there was a family that was there that suddenly disappeared. And everything you see as you go through this thing has some clue or clues as to what actually took place, and you got to figure it out. And so again, we didn't have time to get into that. So I said, we're just going to walk through and see what there is. And it is just totally trippy and psychedelic. I'm just showing you some examples of different rooms we came in. I mean, you can crawl through a fireplace, crawl through a refrigerator, which I did, crawl through a washing machine, which I did. All these things take you to another space. And you see these monstrous structures when you get there of various types. Different background music playing in each room. This one, you come upon this thing. It's not a lobster. It's not a. Maybe it is a scorpion. I don't know. Could be a scorpion. And then over here, here's where the ceiling raises and lowers. It's very dark. You got to be really careful. Unexpectedly, you got to stoop way down. Very hard to see what's going on here, especially with all of those vertical stripes that are lit up. So heads up and heads down, especially as you're navigating through this thing. It's basically a huge circle, but I was glad to get through and then get out and not keep going again. I managed to get through that unscathed. And just another example of a trippy room. I have no idea what the clues might be, but somewhere in there to solving that mystery. And again, all these giant creatures in different rooms. And this was kind of interesting, I thought. Black and white artwork. Doorways everywhere, by the way. I went through a bookcase. At first, I thought it might have been a door, but I was pulling on it. And, no, I'm sorry, I was pushing on it in the room I was in, and nothing happened. So I stepped back a foot or two, and suddenly it opens up toward me, and this guy comes running out. It's like, oh my God. And so we ended up walking through that. So you never know where you're going to find a place to walk through to another room. Sometimes you end up revisiting the same room because there's different doors or fireplaces or whatever you walk through that end up in the same place. That's huge, by the way. You can't tell so much from there. This was, these are two videos I kind of put together that I've taken from different directions. These are all eyes with spooky sounds. And, oh, this was cool. I ended up going through a door and ended up in the skeleton of this giant creature. Might have been a mastodon or something. I don't know. but there were some things that you grab, and you can start banging on the various rib cages. And certain of the bones, when you banged on them, played a tone. Others did not, by the way. They didn't all play a different tone, but most of them did. So that's what I'm playing. I think I should copyright that song. Yeah, it sounds pretty good to me. And again, through another door, you end up in the inside this thing, whatever it is. Some kind of maybe it's a spirit being, for all I know. Okay, we went back after recovering from that experience. I should also mention, by the way, this has been a major boom to Santa Fe economy like they had never seen before. It has really been transformational in many ways for the entire city, especially in terms of the kind of artists that are now visiting there or living there. And in fact, it's been so incredibly, it's earned millions and millions of dollars. It's only been open like 3 years or something. So already they have one under construction in Denver that's going to be twice the size of this one. And then after that, one is going to be ongoing construction. I don't know if they've broken ground yet in Las Vegas, Nevada. 3 times or more the size of the one of this one, even larger than the one in Denver. So if you're in Santa Fe, spend some time at Meow Wolf. If you're in Denver, once that opens, go to it. I don't know if it's going to be called Meow Wolf. I would imagine it will be. And then ultimately, if you're in Las Vegas and you want to save some money for an entry fee, don't gamble it all away, go to that one too. Oh, I forgot. I'm way ahead of myself. So I was still in search of the ideal IPA. I mean, the ones I bought in that store were fine, but it was not really something I would buy again. So it turns out that in our hotel, there was a bar. And I knew it was there, I just never really went to it. So before dinner, I figured, okay, maybe I'll buy some drinks for dinner instead of just having coffee and water or whatever else is available in the dining room. So got my wife some wine because she's not a beer drinker. And I asked the guy if he had a really, really good IPA. And he said, we just got these in. And he wasn't sure what they tasted like. He said I would be the very first one. So they're from, obviously, the local brewing company, Santa Fe Brewing Company, which I'd never heard of. But there's so many breweries out there. Yeah, I haven't heard of hardly any of them. And this one is called the 7K IPA. It was incredible. It was very reminiscent of the kind of IPAs that I have in New England that are also known as New England IPAs or NEIPAs, N-E-I-P-As, New England IPAs. And I'd never expected to taste something like that out there. And a few nights later, I had another one. This was, I didn't have room in my luggage to take any back. I've asked our local wine merchant, a beer merchant, to see if he can somehow get this, and I haven't been back there to find out. I have a feeling he's not going to be able to get it. But if you are in the Santa Fe area and you come across this IPA and you like IPAs, do not pass this one up, the 7K IPA. Okay, that night, as I mentioned earlier, we had Ronald Roybal, who is apparently a notable world music musician. He's Native American, and he gave us a 1-hour concert. He plays flutes. He plays guitar, obviously, because it was only him. He could only play one instrument at a time. So he had some pre-recorded guitar backgrounds that he used on some, not all, of the things that he played on the flute. And here is just an example.
Descended from Tewa people, specifically from San Ildefonso Pueblo. my music is a modern interpretation of all that has come before. So my music, what I've tried to do is make indigenous music more accessible to non-Indian people.
Really nice. I mean, my genre is just good old rock and roll, but this was gorgeous. I ended up buying like 3 CDs from him while he was there. So if you've never heard a bone flute, well, you have now. In fact, the very first thing he played for us was through a bone flute. Okay, the next day was, oh my God, this was an awesome day. We saw something that we were very, very lucky to see. Well, first of all, we were given kind of an orientation to Pueblo dances by the woman from Owenge, who spoke to us that first, well, actually it was day 2, I guess, Elena Junez. And after that lecture, we all got on our buses and traveled to the San Felipe Pueblo to watch something very unique, a corn dance. And then after lunch, we took a second field trip to Museum Hill. And then in the evening, Cisco Guevara entertained us. He is a cowboy storyteller. So Elena Junez gave us an orientation lecture about Pueblos, especially this one, because she's from a different Pueblo, Owenge. The San Felipe Pueblo has very strict rules and absolutely no photography, no audio recording, no nothing once you enter that Pueblo. And so the dance that we saw, the corn dance, is one of 4 dances performed each year to try to get it to rain, but rain for different reasons. And so this is the beginning of the planting season, which is why it's called the corn dance, because they want their corn to grow. So they're praying for rain. Sure enough, I mean, correlation is not causation. I should know that better than anybody else. And but sure enough, it rained that night. so go figure. Would it have rained anyway? I'm not going to answer that question. Anyway, what you see here is a photograph from a different Pueblo, because different Pueblos have their own dances, pretty much in the spirit of, rain dances. And so, again, we just can't see one from San Felipe Pueblo, but it kind of looked a little bit like that. So what Elena pointed out to us were very strict rules about the Pueblo etiquette at San Felipe Pueblo. So as I said, no photos, no video, no auditory, no audio recording. People live there. We are in their home. We're on their yards, in their yards. Respect the fact that that is where we are, just as you would if somebody came on your property. These are not performances intended for the public. We are privileged, given the opportunity to be able to observe these things. They're religious ceremonies for these people. Praying for rain, a much needed commodity out there. Therefore, if we're going to speak at all, tried not to, whisper, speak extremely quietly. Don't talk by any means to any of the Pueblo dancers or singers or drummers. Leave everybody alone. And don't ask questions of any of the native attendees. There are many attendees there from other Pueblos, because this is a really special event. And people there in the same Pueblo, of course, who are not among the performers, even though there's hundreds of performers. And you just don't ask them anything. Again, this is a religious ceremony. You don't say, hey, what does that mean? No, you don't do that. There were some seats available, but don't sit in them. Those are there for the native attendees, not for us onlookers. And then if you're standing, there's only 4 ways to get into the dancing area, this big arena, which I'll show you in a minute. Only 4 ways to get in and out. If we're standing around those areas, move aside. Don't block those pathways, because that's where all of the dancers and other performers are going to be entering and then leaving, making room for the other group of performers. Do not block those exits. Don't wait to be told. Just don't stand right there. Stand off to the side. Whew. Well, not that much to remember if you keep in mind that we're attending not a performance, but a ceremony on somebody's own property and not something that's meant for tourists. So we go down, and Interstate 25 does go directly to Albuquerque. And there's the San Felipe Pueblo right there. And each of those yellow dots, by the way, is a different Pueblo with different rules and in some cases somewhat unique dances based on their own tradition. Each of these is an independent nation, basically, and the San Felipe is number 11. And all of these others that are clustered in this area, there's Santa Fe right there. You can see there's a huge cluster of different Pueblos right around the area where we were visiting. I think that one's Taos right up there. So on the road to San Felipe Pueblo, there's the exit off the interstate right there. So time to start turning off all electronics at this point. We're not too far from entering their space. Okay, so we came in from this direction right here, and our bus dropped us off over here. So we had to walk down here to find which entrance we wanted to go in. It was totally our choice. And so again, there's only 4 of them. The first one is you go in there and through this. Again, you can see they're not very large. This is the performance arena right there. The other entrance is, let's see, I believe the way to get in on the other one is through here. And I think it's this way. You go through here, and then you sort of go through this building and get in there. Now, that's even narrower, I think. We didn't actually see that one. We didn't even attempt that one. So we kept walking down here. This one was really packed because it's the first one you go through. And of course, a lot of the performers were getting in there as well. So we walked down here to get to this one over here. So we walked through here and then in through here. Very narrow, but we ended up standing off to the side right there. So we were able to see a lot. We positioned ourselves very, very well. And then the other one is over here. I'll go through that area right there. Or you could enter it through here as well. So there's a closer view. And again, it shows you the entrances and exits over there, the one we were at over there, and then the one over there. That's the best you can do. That's a drawing. You're not allowed to draw anything, by the way, while you're in there. So in addition to no video or audio or photos, you don't take out pieces of paper and sketch pads and whatnot and start drawing. They will come and take it away from you. And in fact, we were warned, if they see a cell phone, no questions asked, they will take it away and you're not going to get it back. Again, you are their guests. They set the rules, and so you have to respect them. So they said, don't test that because it's not going to work out favorably. They have eyes in the back of their head. Sure enough, one person, I think it was from a different group of our Rhodes Scholar Tour, wasn't from Verde, but was outside this area where the performance was taking place, and there was a church there, and wanted to take a picture of the outside of the church, and looked around, there was nobody coming, and took her cell phone out, and before she could raise it, bam, one of the people there grabbed it from her. She was very lucky. They gave it back to her, but they told her, put this away and don't take it out again. If they did not have to do that, they would have been within their rights to keep that cell phone forever. Okay, so they really mean business. So, yeah, I didn't even put mine on silent. I turned it off altogether. I didn't want buzzing or anything going off. So the performance arena is this whole space here. And then there's these dancers that go around. And notice these guys that are dressed in these striped costumes. These are called clowns. They are mischief makers. That's why they're called clowns. You'll often see them descending from the ceiling in certain pueblos. From ours, they came marching in with the rest of the group through those different entrances. But they run around and do whatever it is they do. I didn't know the meaning of everything that was going on here, or hardly, nothing. I didn't know anything about what it was I was seeing, but you just don't go asking people either. This is an audio recording from a different pueblo that allowed it. Obviously not made by us because we only went to one, but this is one of the rain dances. And the same with this photograph. This is a very old photograph. It could very well have been from San Felipe Pueblo before the rules kicked in. I don't know how long ago that was, but this is a very old photograph. So I don't know for sure if that's San Felipe or one of the other ones. But I'm showing it to you because it shows you the ornate costumes, even though it's black and white. This was a very colorful event. All ages are involved in this, ranging from little kids, like they looked like they couldn't have been older than 5, marching around with all these adults and trying to learn the dance. Okay, after that was a really exciting experience. Oh, and I had a specialty for a snack before we left. Fried bread. Elizabeth told us, Elizabeth again is our tour guide, she told us that a very special kind of bread there, it's made by the Pueblo people, it's called fried bread. You're going to have a hard time finding it anywhere else. It's different from fried dough, which you find, at state fairs and everywhere. So she said, if you have a chance to get fried bread, try it. No one knows what it's made of, but she said, don't worry about it. Just get it and eat it. So we found there was a crafts fair going on the outside, by the way. There were craftsmen selling their crafts of jewelry and artwork and all kinds of things, all these Pueblo people outside that arena. And so they had food trucks. And one food truck, the only one we found that had fried bread, we stood at this one and I got a piece of fried bread. You would think, oh, it's going to be greasy and everything. It actually wasn't all that greasy at all, just a little bit. I thought it was delicious. I can't tell you what it tasted like. You can't describe taste very well verbally, but I really did like it, so it was good to try. Well, one of the main reasons I'm showing this is this structure here. They were all over the place. These are volcanoes, and some of them are have the potential of being active. They're all dormant right now, but they've just not been erupting at all. You see these everywhere along the countryside, along the roadways. So that is a real volcano. Obviously, they're easy to identify by the shape. There's a smaller one over there. So we're heading back to Santa Fe. As we enter Santa Fe, we saw something that I was unaware of. There's this express train there called the Rail Runner. And some of the rail runners go down to Albuquerque and back, sort of as commute trains, things like that. And so They are all designated as rail runners because there are train tracks that run right through Santa Fe. And Elizabeth was all excited that we got to see this, so I had to photograph it.
Right in front of us.
It's a
The
train,
rail runner. Now, the
but it's a rail runner. It's
is
special,
the New
a
Mexico
special train.
State Bird. So that's
So
why
there's the
right
rail
there
runner.
is the rail runner.
Double deckers.
And it
Yeah.
is- the cars do have, that double decker.
I like short trains. They don't
It's a
tie up
very
traffic
nice
very
service.
long, unlike these long freight trains. They have those too, by the way. Okay, let's see. Then in the afternoon, remember we had another field trip. After lunch, we go from the hotel. This is not as long a drive as the map makes it look like, about 10 minutes or so, to a place called Museum Hill, because there's a bunch of museums clustered over here on this hill. Good name, Museum Hill. And so you turn into Museum Hill as we do here, and notice there's going to be a statue over on the right-hand side as we make this turn. There it is right there, Stagecoach. The best shot I got of it, it was a little bit too far from the museums we were at to walk down to. We didn't have all that time. If I had a lot of time, I could have done it. And so as you walk up to the two main museums, up the stairwell to this plaza, you're greeted by this statue. In fact, there's several interesting statues along this plaza. And there's a labyrinth, and I actually walked the labyrinth, both going in and going out. And so, you would think, well, green means go and red means stop. You should follow the green. Well, I was corrected when I started following the green. The guy told me, no, you gotta walk in the red. I said, okay, whatever. And so I walked through the red. I made myself all the way through this thing, right into the middle. The other people that were there weren't too many. They said, okay, I made it to the middle, I'm cutting out. And they walked directly out. I said, no, I'm committed. I'm going to make my way back. So I walked in and out of this labyrinth. But that's another one of the statues, probably the most ornate one on this plaza, outside the museums, of this Apache Mountain Spirit Dancer. And then there's a hoop dancer. I told you there were hoop dancers everywhere. So this hoop dancer right outside that same museum. And then we have this one as well. And so the first museum we walked into, by the way, we were turned loose. We could do whatever it was we want. So walked into the Museum of Indian Arts and Culture. I was optimistic about seeing interesting things there, and I didn't see a whole lot. So I think my wife was kind of bonded to that museum, so she spent most of her time in there, not all of her time in there. But at that point, we split and we went our separate ways. So I walked to the other museum off the plaza, the Museum of International Folk Art, which I thought, I'm really not going to like this one at all. This one turned out to be at least a little bit interesting to me because they had all of these displays. In fact, the main thing were all of these displays with figurines set up in elaborate scenes like this. I mean, this is a pueblo, and this is obviously one of those ceremonial dances. I don't see a clown. Is there a clown? No, I don't see a clown. But quite elaborate. Some of these were huge, by the way. And then, of course, the Day of the Dead figures. Like we see there. I said Day of the Dead. That's also a zombie movie, but we're not talking about the zombie movie here. And I thought this was interesting. This is called tramp art because it's made of junk, basically. Things that you just don't know what to do with, and so you create junk out. You create art out of the junk. This is great. I mean, being a musician, a guitar player, well, we have two guitars here. And this is a close-up of the one that you see over here that I took. And it's made of cigar boxes. Both of these things are. And there's some speakers down here. So you have your amplifier, basically. It's great. It is an amplifier, by the way, for this guitar. There's this thing leading to it. It's behind a case, so you can't hear what it sounds like. Well, I got through that pretty quickly because I zoomed through all museums, even the ones that I kind of half like. And so I still had a lot of time. So I walked across the way to this other museum that they told us was there. If we had time, we might like it. So it was an outdoorsy thing. So I said, okay, I like outdoors. So I went to their botanical garden. It's still early in the planting season. And but there were some things that were starting to blossom. And I love cactus. We don't have cactus out in New England, obviously. It's the wrong climate. But I enjoyed looking at the various cactus plants in this botanical garden. These are blooming. The claret cup cactus. And this beehive cactus. This, by the way, is really small. I had to bend way down to get this photograph. These are tiny cacti. We went back to the hotel, we had dinner, and then we had our storyteller by a guy named Francisco Antonio Miguel Nino de Ortiz Ladron de Guevara. Can't say that in one breath. He says that's why everybody just calls him Cisco, Cisco Guevara. So he does that. He tells stories. He's actually a river raft operator. He gives these tours. That's his main job. But he'd always be telling people stories, and somebody on one of these tours suggested, why don't you just do that? And so he started doing that sort of as a side project, Cisco Guevara. So we listened to some of his stories. They were fine. You know, I'm just totally not into that too much, but he was pretty good. I kind of enjoyed him. Next day, another special day, a field trip to the Bandelier National Monument, and then in the afternoon and evening we had free time. So, how do you get to the Bandelier National Monument? From Santa Fe, you do this semicircle to go around and then down, and then you end up at the Bandelier National Monument. It's less than an hour. It's not so bad. And so, along the way, I got a photograph of something that was pointed out to me on an earlier trip down this road, an interstate. It's called Camel Rock. And you can see it looks like a camel. There's the head. There's the neck. One hump. So they said it had two, but one was missing. So whatever. But there it is, Camel Rock, looking like a camel. Sort of, kind of. Or just like a rock. Make of it whatever you want. Okay. So here we are at the Bandelier National Monument, and starting out at their visitor center. This is what's called a kiva. I think in most pueblos these are underground. I think I've seen some that are above, but they are places of ceremonies. When one sees a kiva, you're not supposed to go inside. Obviously, this one is not currently functional, but it's there to look at, and you can see it's this rather large underground arena. And we see some rocks in the foreground that formed various structures way back when, and then over in the mountains, and we're about to go up one of them, at least part of the way. These holes are called cavates, and they are areas of small dwellings. The rooms are really, really small, and you'll see because I actually went into one. But at one point in time, there were outer structures that then led into them, but those are, of course, all gone. So we walked up this path, this walkway of sorts, and it switched back as we went further up and up. And starting to look down now, you can see a better view of what used to be actual buildings, the same stone structures you saw a moment ago. So here I am going up a ladder and looking into one of these cavates. They're very echoey. It would be a great place to do a sound recording. But other than that, you'd have to be relatively short to stand up in there. And looking down even, so now we're even higher up. Again, those same stone structures over here in this area over here. And some over here as well. And now I'm going up another one. Yeah, very frustrating. Tried to have a conversation with an echo. Okay. Here is a computerized rendition of what these actually once looked like. So again, computer graphics adding on the outside structures. You can actually see how, as they go into the cave, they're not very deep, even with these the computerized simulations. That is actually looking into one, and they're rather small. There's the entrance to one of them, and the exit. Very low ceilings. Some of them a little higher than others. You know, I think it can stand up in some of them to some extent. They don't interconnect to other cavates, though. And that's a computerized rendition of what the outside would have looked like, probably looked like. So people would also go out into these outer areas and then be able to go directly into the kivas. I'm sorry, the kivas, the cavates. And of course, there's the usual ladders that I pointed out at the Taos Pueblo that enable one to go up and up and up. So once we got down from there, we wanted to go see the Longhouse. We weren't all the way down to the bottom at this point, but further down than where we were a moment ago. The Longhouse is this long structure, a long stone wall, basically, is what it amounts to, with obviously there's cavates in there as well. And the thing about this is there's some artwork that's been left behind. So you see something right there, a face. There's remnants of another face there. There is something up there, probably at one time was a face. The more you stare at some of these things, the more you start to see more and more. Anyway, these are called petroglyphs, and that's what the Longhouse is particularly known for, these various petroglyphs that were left by older civilizations. There's one right there. Almost looks like an alien, doesn't it? Oh my God, you can have all kinds of conspiracies going from that one. There is one of the cavates, very similar to the one you saw the computer simulation of, because it has those stones on the outside. By the way, there's another face right over there. I'm sure the longer we look, we can find more. I'm not going to take that much time. There's a circular structure right there, almost kind of like a crop circle of sorts. Who knows what that one is. And some more cavatis, some more artwork. And I saw some, there's a circular one right there. There's, I can't tell what that is over there. It's obviously a petroglyph of some sort. Somewhere along the line, I know. Oh, there it is. There's a bird. Almost looks like a duck. There's the head and the neck and the body, and the feet would be down there. I knew it was there somewhere. And just again, petroglyphs everywhere, and that's why people want to go see this. At one point, there's actually a remnant of artwork in this opening over here on the Longhouse. Very distinct mammal of some sort. Can't tell exactly what it is. I'm not sure which end is the head. That could be the head of a wolf howling. That could be the head of something that's lowered to the ground. Very hard to tell what's going on there, but you can see it's a body. There are legs standing as well. So, okay, that was Bandelier. We got to walk through there. It was pretty good. And now we are going back. These stratifications you see represent different layers and different points of time. As the waters receded, they left different degrees of sediment that formed different colors. And so when you see these things, and sometimes you'll see them in Western movies as well, even modern Western movies that were filmed out here, you see these in the background, and of course it's not very clear why you have those different layers, but that's actually why. So back in town, we had some free time. We decided to go into the Palace of the Governors. Again, these are all these craftspeople, and this is along the historic plaza in Santa Fe. Went into the New Mexico Museum, New Mexico History Museum, which is sort of right next door. Not a lot there that kept my attention, but again, I just don't like this stuff. But I really love this this stagecoach, full-size stagecoach. And there was also this typewriter. So who was Bandelier? His name was Adolf Bandelier. And don't ask me about any more because I knew while I was there and I forgot. But he took this around with him. It's a portable typewriter dating back to the 19 teens and before. And these are actually Billy the Kid's spurs. Yeah, there they are, right there, Billy the Kid's spurs. But one part of this I really liked, being into music. I found this very old Victrola, and there were records in cases along the way, all having to do with either Mexico or Santa Fe, either by musicians from that area, or in the lyrics or the song titles, or in some cases both. Not familiar with Lawton Williams, but certainly knew about the Four Freshmen back in the 1950s and early 60s. And of course the song Route 66, which has been covered and covered and recovered and everything in different renditions. I, of course, am partial to the rendition by the Rolling Stones, one of their earliest recordings. And then there was this very small section on Code Talkers. Now, I knew about Code Talkers only because of the X-Files television program. So in the original series, that would be episodes 1 through 7, really, and then there were 8 and 9, and then the 2 extra seasons thereafter. There were actually some Native Americans, and one of which was actually a code talker, and he was asked to decipher some apparently alien type thing, and I don't know if it was or wasn't, but in any event, code talkers back in World War II were these Native Americans who put things in their native language, and it was a code that nobody could decipher other than them. And this, of course, was to enable people to send messages that could not be intercepted and interpreted. They might be intercepted, but they would not be interpreted by any of the enemies at that particular point in time. This is disturbing, but there it is. This is a telegraph that describes the dropping of the atomic bomb at Hiroshima. Remember, Los Alamos is very close by in this area. It's not far away at all. So historically, Los Alamos is kind of important, but here's the reason why. I'm not going to read this. You can put it on pause if you want to. We had dinner at this very hard to get into restaurant. It's probably the most popular restaurant in this area in Santa Fe, called The Shed. I had to make reservations like, I don't know, 5 or 6 days before, and even then there were only 2 time slots available. So they had excellent food, obviously. It's a Mexican restaurant. Also has New Mexican style Spanish food as well. There are subtle differences between the two. There's this outdoor patio where you could sit, but it was kind of chilly that day, so we went inside. And, okay, no more green chili soup or stew or anything like that, so I loved it. I'm glad I had it. But I wanted to get one of my favorite dishes that I often get in Connecticut, the poblano relleno plate. It's a big pepper, and it's stuffed. And in this case, stuffed with Munster cheese with sauce and all kinds of things. It was really great. It was excellent. And it looked like that. So that's the pepper. They're supposed to be charred on the outside, but it's okay to eat that. And there's cheese on the inside. And 2 margaritas once again. Yeah. Margaritas out there are small. What's this? Oh, my wife had a fish taco, so that's what their fish tacos look like. Chunks of fish. I do not do seafood other than crab cakes. Well, this is our final day of being there, day 7. Starting out with a lecture about the geology and geography of northern New Mexico by a geologist, an academic named Kurt Kempter. And then we visited Ghost Ranch, and then visited not too far from there the Echo Amphitheater. Had great fun at both of those places, as you'll see. And then we had our final dinner back in Santa Fe at a restaurant not too far from the hotel called the Santa Cafe. So here's Kurt Kempter, again, a geologist. He's a former Fulbright Fellow. He's instructed NASA astronauts about geology, things that they might encounter on the moon, for example, and looking at what's available in New Mexico in terms of what might be similar terrain. when we were in Iceland, that's pure lava. I know that a lot of astronaut training went on there as well. So he talked primarily about Ghost Ranch because that's where we were going to be going. So here is, again, our hotel up the road through Okeowinge, the typical route. And oh boy, I knew how to pronounce this. Ghost Ranch is up here, but the mailing address is this little city here, Ubique. Ubique, I believe, is the proper pronunciation. And more volcanoes. Again, there's 3 of them right there. There's one in the background there along the way. And this is the Rio Grande River, passing over that one again, this particularly scenic view from the moving vehicle, so it's not the best picture in all the world. And now we enter Ghost Ranch. And there's a bunch of buildings that make up Ghost Ranch. We had a cafeteria, almost like a school cafeteria style lunch there. That's what we were told it would be like, a school cafeteria. It pretty much was. The food was fine. And then we were just turned loose to go do whatever we want. If we wanted to go hiking, we could go hiking. We had about maybe 2.5 hours. And there's some small museums there. That was a draw for my wife, and also some horses at a ranch. She loves horses, so she went to that. There's the horse corrals there. As for me, I wanted to go up a mountain, and so I went up to, I'm trying to reorient myself here. Where did I go? Okay. So I went up, I just found it. I went up to Chimney Rock. There it is, right there. I can't read. I'm staring at the map. Number 1, the Chimney Rock Trail. And, forgot to mention that a number of movies were shot here, at least in part, at the Ghost Ranch. This cabin was used a lot in the original movie City Slickers. There was also a City Slickers 2. I don't know if it was used for that as well. But definitely in the original movie with Billy Crystal, Daniel Stern, and Bruno Kirby, among others. So these are all the movies that they had on display in the visitor center that showed you what was filmed there. I don't know if there were more than this or not, but they had these posters up. Missing, Indiana Jones, and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Then the remake of The Magnificent Seven with Denzel Washington. All the Pretty Horses with Matt Damon. The remake of 3:10 to Yuma with Russell Crowe and Christian Bale. Young Guns with Emilio Estevez and others. Cowboys versus Aliens, a really cool movie with Harrison Ford and Daniel Craig. There's City Slickers again. The Hostiles, rather, not The Hostiles, which is, as I record this, is currently playing in some areas, or the DVD just became available, with another Christian Bale movie and an older Western Silverado. Various scenes were shot here, and if you look at these movies, you can kind of tell from the background, from the general area. I mean, there may not all of the scenes were done at Ghost Ranch, but certainly New Mexico, but many of the scenes were done at Ghost Ranch. When I went outside, before we headed off to the cafeteria, I noticed they had just turned loose these sheep, longhorn sheep. So we have female ewes and some male rams. I think is that one right there? Or is that one right there? Hard to tell from this angle. There were 2 rams that I saw. No telephoto. Oh, there's a ram right there. I can tell from the horns. That's one of the rams. Getting a little nervous. I wasn't quite sure if they charge people. There were no signs. I later found out, and the ram, by the way, is very close to us here. I later found out that they allow farmers in local areas to turn their herds loose here in small numbers to graze, because there's a lot of grazing area here, which might not be the case on all of the local farms. I don't know if these were from a local farm or if these are part of Ghost Ranch. But there goes that ram. And I'm sorry, here's a ram right here. That other one might have been a ram. I don't know. This guy, she was this ewe. Poor thing. She got left behind, so she is racing to catch up. So that was pretty cool. And again, one of the rams right there. Okay, so here's the trail I went up, the hiking path, Chimney Rock Trail, and it's a dirt trail all the way, of varying degrees of inclination. I guess that's the right word, of incline. There's some areas were steeper than others. Unfortunately, I'm just wearing regular street shoes, and like that, Pro Rockers, Rockport, Pro Walkers rather, not rockers, Pro Walkers, with hardly any traction on the bottom. But I made it up. Got to be super careful. Going down is worse, actually, when you're dealing with loose sand and gravel. But again, oh, here you can really see very nicely these layered areas. Some of the buildings as I head upward, as I pan across the countryside. And there's another mesa there. The notable mesa is the one that's coming up in the background there, by the way, is a volcano. But that one is the one that Georgia O'Keeffe portrayed in a lot of her artwork. Okay, well, this is a cactus, once again, the same one that we saw at the Botanical Garden. And this is the claret cup flower coming from this claret cup cactus, go figure. And so it was really striking because it was like, it's nothing but rocks. And then suddenly you come upon this, and there's this one cactus with all these blooming flowers. It was pretty striking as we get closer and closer to the top of Chimney Rock. There's a close-up view of those magnificent claret cup flowers. And there it is. I've also seen it listed as the claret cup hedgehog cactus. So this is Abiquiu Lake off in the distance, and we're getting higher and higher up. You can see the path that I had been going on. Some places are flatter than others, but it's those steeper areas, and a great view of that mesa that Georgia O'Keeffe was fond of. Okay, so I got as far as marker 10. I could have gone further, but I had to get back because our bus was going to be leaving, and it's slower going down, especially with non-hiking shoes, than it is going up. So I had to leave some time. The markers, by the way, I found out were meaningless. They meant something. They were marking, in some cases, geological configurations and or plants, but now they mark nothing in particular, but they left the markers up. The guy at the visitor center wasn't even sure that they were still up. I said, yeah, I was trying to figure out what's marker 10. I said, oh, I don't know. But I think there was a total of 17. I think number 17 is way at the top. So I got pretty far up, and I did go around the corner a bit, but here I am narrating a little bit about what I was experiencing. Okay, I'm on Chimney Rock, and I've made it all the way up to marker 10, just a little bit beyond, and that was 6,700 feet up, and I'm not going to make it all the way. I'm wearing street shoes, and going down is going to be a lot slower than was going up. It always is. But it was really awesome up here, really, really nice. So let's see what happens on the way down. And with the elevation, you can see I'm catching my breath from time to time, which typically I never have to do. But, you know, these are pretty high elevations. So I did go around that corner a little bit past marker 10, and that, of course, is Chimney Rock, and you can see why it's called Chimney Rock. So got pretty close to it. There's no telephoto. This is all with my iPhone 6 Plus, everything that you're seeing video-wise and photograph-wise. So almost made it. There were some switchbacks to get around all this stuff before you made it to the top. Couldn't spend the time. I believe there is a person right there. Good for him or her. Probably not part of our tour group, though. And, I met somebody going up the mountain, and they asked me to take their picture. So as I was heading down, I said, yeah, I'll do that. Would you take my picture? And so here she did with some rather colorful backgrounds. Okay, when I hit bottom, I was maybe about, 15 minutes before departure time. I got down faster than I had calculated, and I just sped through my usual museum speed, sped through the dinosaur and anthropology museums at the bottom. They weren't all that large anyway. But I did enjoy this one a little bit. Ghost Ranch is known for the discovery of this particular fossil, the Coelophysis dinosaur. Of course, it's all twisty and turny here. This is not the actual fossil, as it is the case in most cases. This is a cast made from the fossil, but pretty much that's what it looked like. There's a reconstruction of Coelophysis. In fact, it's now become the New Mexico state fossil. And that is an artist's reconstruction of what it probably looked like. These aren't overly huge. They're maybe about, I don't know, they would a little bit shorter maybe than a person when the animal was standing in this posture, probably come up to an average person's neck or something like that. So we're not dealing with Brontosaurus or Tyrannosaurus or anything quite that large. But formidable animals. You wouldn't want to encounter one of these in a dark alley or any other place for that matter. Okay, so got on the buses, went 5 minutes from Ghost Ranch to Echo Amphitheater. Why was it called Echo Amphitheater? Well, you probably can figure that out. So as we're approaching, here it is. It's a naturally occurring, hollowed out area, thus the amphitheater part. It's not functioning as an amphitheater. They don't have concerts there, but very much like the Hollywood Bowl, though. And so we parked and we go up this paved path. Ultimately, it leads to a shorter unpaved path, not too far from the actual amphitheater where you can look into it. And here I am looking into it. And so I'm at the base of the amphitheater looking upward into this hollowed out rock. And now here I am trying to make it echo. We're pretty close. Let's try this. Hello!
I love it.
How's it going? I was the first from our group to arrive. Someone was right behind me. Then a whole bunch of them arrived, and we're trying to yell things into it as well. It's a good idea. Woo!
Crazy. Okay, let's do it again. Right, get everybody up here. Come on, everybody. Howl.
Come on. Everyone's got to howl. Howl. We're going to howl.
Group howl, perfect.
Okay, so we have all our group here, a big chunk of the group. There's somebody right there.
24 hours.
Okay.
Locked up in the asylum together.
Yeah. Ready?
1, 2, 3.
Woo!
They didn't play.
Now, this is what old people do when they retire. Yeah, I guess. Anyway, so after doing a bunch of animal sounds like that, someone said, no, I think I said, because somebody suggested, they knew I was in a rock band, and they said, well, we should sing some rock song. And I said, oh, yeah, because we're looking into rocks. And so I'm thinking, off the top of my head, what can we sing? I said, well, the first thing that came to mind was I Am a Rock by Simon & Garfunkel. That's not the right song for this. It's it's a great song, not the right song for this. So then somebody, I'm grateful that they thought of this, was We Will Rock You. And so here we are doing that briefly. We will rock you. Whoa, what happened to my harmonies? Okay, I spared you. We went further than that. We actually started before that. And I kept doing the I was trying to keep the beat, keep everybody on track. There was no drum. Anyway, so, that was all well and fine. So there it is again, the Echo Amphitheater. And there's some really great rocks, by the way. I mean, some really great natural structures all around it, as there is just about everywhere. Heading back now, this was a rather interesting, seemingly standalone type rock. There it is from the other side right there. Very narrow. Didn't see too many things like that. We saw more things like this over at the Colorado National Monument on our previous trip. Obviously, a volcano, right? There's no question about it. Okay, as we head right into Santa Fe, right in the outskirts, right there is this massive cemetery, the Santa Fe National Cemetery. These are all, it looks like Arlington. I've never been to Arlington, so I don't know how expansive that is. This just seemed to go on, and it was amazing. There another portion of it. It's just incredible. And then as we enter the town, we took a different way in for a change. And so I saw something I didn't see before, the so-called barn dog statue. They have a lot of these silver type statues. I mean, they're not made of silver, but whatever, they're metal of some sort. There's even a swing down there I just noticed for the first time. Final day. Okay. That, by the way, nothing went on that night after dinner. Everybody was packing. So the final day is our final buffet breakfast and our respective departures. This is now Albuquerque, heading on the bus, the shuttle bus back to Albuquerque. So there's a section of Albuquerque right there. And back to the Albuquerque International Sunport. And we flew American, checking in at American Airlines. And actually, as airports go, this was kind of nice. Albuquerque is a good place to fly into if you have to make a connection somewhere. I feel the same way about Denver, for that matter. But there's this magnificent, it looks like bronze to me. I don't know if it's actual bronze. And I have no idea what this is supposed to be. And it almost looks like something from Meow Wolf, but it's not. So anyway, there's a bunch of stuff like this. This was right at our gate. Our gate was D30. So yeah, that was pretty much our trip. Boy, this was a long one, wasn't it? Sorry it was this long, but there was so much to cover. And again, would I do another organized tour? Most likely not. If I were, I would do it with Rhodes Scholar, hands down. There's no question about that. They were superb in every way, and we were one of the newbies. This was our first tour. Many other people that were there had gone on multiple Rhodes Scholar tours. There was one person that was did 30. I thought somebody said there was somebody there that did 100. That's hard to fathom, but they do so many tours. I mean, I could see where that would happen. So I just like organizing our own tours, doing all the research, hiring private guides, being able to stop off wherever I want to stop off, and so on and so forth, which we couldn't do here. But if I were to cave in someday, it would be with Rhodes Scholar. So that was our trip to Santa Fe, New Mexico, and the surrounding area.